The desperate decision rain pounded against the hospital windows as Amelia Foster stared at the mounting medical bills spread across her lap. At 26, with dark circles under her hazel eyes and her once vibrant auburn hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, she looked far older than her years. The steady beeping of machines monitoring her sister's vitals provided a grim soundtrack to her calculations. "That can't be right," she whispered, rechecking the total for the third time. The number remained the same, 157,132.47. 6 months ago, her 19-year-old sister Lily had been diagnosed with a rare kidney disease. 2 months later, their parents died in a car accident driving home from the hospital, leaving Amelia as Lily's sole caretaker and the inheritor of their modest family home, along with its underwater mortgage and all their medical debt. Amelia's job as an administrative assistant at a local marketing firm barely covered the mortgage payments, let alone Lily's treatments. She had sold everything of value, picked up weekend shifts at a coffee shop, and maxed out 3 credit cards. Still, it wasn't enough. "Hey, you're thinking too loud," Lily murmured from the hospital bed, her voice weak but her spirit undimmed. Despite losing weight and color, Lily's blue eyes still sparkled with the optimism Amelia herself had lost. "Just working out some numbers," Amelia lied, tucking the bills into her worn leather bag. "How are you feeling?" "Like I could run a marathon," Lily joked, then coughed. "Maybe a short one. Around the nurse's station." Amelia smiled despite herself. Even now, Lily could make her laugh. "Ms. Foster?" A nurse poked her head into the room. "Dr. Patterson would like to speak with you." In the hallway, the doctor's expression told Amelia everything before he spoke a word. "Lily's condition is deteriorating faster than we anticipated," he said gently. "There's an experimental treatment that could help, but it's not covered by insurance," Amelia finished for him. "How much?" The figure he named made her knees weak. "I understand this is difficult," the doctor added, "but without it, Lily has perhaps 6 months." Back home that night, in the kitchen where family photos still covered the refrigerator, her parents' smiling faces a cruel reminder of what she'd lost. Amelia scrolled through job listings on her laptop. Nothing paid enough. Nothing would save Lily. Her phone pinged with an email notification. The subject line made her heart skip. "Response to your application. Urgent." 3 weeks earlier, in a moment of desperate optimism, Amelia had applied for an executive assistant position at Reed Innovations. The technology company was known for its cutting-edge medical software and its founder's eccentric brilliance. The salary listed had been triple what she currently earned. The email was brief. "Your application has been selected for final consideration. Interview tomorrow 9 a.m. Reed Tower. Confidentiality required." Amelia had almost forgotten applying. The position had seemed so far out of reach that she'd sent her resume on a whim, never expecting a response. Now it felt like the universe throwing her a lifeline. The next morning, Amelia stood before the imposing glass structure of Reed Tower, wearing her only professional outfit, a navy blue dress she'd bought for her college graduation 4 years earlier. Her hands trembled slightly as she adjusted her blazer and entered the pristine lobby. "Amelia Foster for the 9 a.m. interview," she told the receptionist, who directed her to the top floor. The elevator ascended in silence, carrying her toward what felt like her last hope. The doors opened directly into a minimalist reception area, where a poised woman with a sleek bob and sharp eyes greeted her. "Ms. Foster, I'm Diane Wells, Mr. Reed's chief of staff. Follow me." As they walked down a corridor lined with abstract art that probably cost more than Amelia's house, Diane spoke without turning. "Mr. Reed values his privacy and his time. Be direct, honest, and don't waste either." They stopped before a set of double doors. Diane's expression softened slightly. "Good luck." Jackson Reed's office was a stark contrast to the sterile modernity of the building. Dark wood, leather-bound books, and antique maps created an atmosphere more reminiscent of a 19th-century explorer's study than a tech mogul's headquarters. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a commanding view of the city, gray and rain-soaked below. The man himself stood with his back to her, gazing out at the skyline. At 35, Jackson Reed had built a billion-dollar company from a dorm room idea. His technological innovations had revolutionized medical diagnostics, making him a fortune and earning him a reputation as both a genius and a recluse. "Ms. Foster," he said without turning. "You're punctual." That's a promising start. When he finally faced her, Amelia understood why he avoided public appearances. Jackson Reed was strikingly handsome in a severe way. Sharp cheekbones, penetrating green eyes, and dark hair cut with military precision. A jagged scar ran from his left temple to his jaw, giving him an intimidating asymmetry. But it was his expression, or lack thereof, that truly caught her attention. His face betrayed absolutely nothing. "Sit," he gestured to a chair across from his desk. Amelia sat, folding her hands in her lap to hide their trembling. "Your resume is unremarkable," he stated flatly, glancing at a tablet. "Community college education, mediocre employment history, no connections in the industry. Yet Diane insists you're worth my time. Why?" The blunt assessment stung, but desperation made Amelia bold. "Because I'll work harder than anyone you've ever hired. Because I need this job more than the Ivy League graduates who usually apply. Because I have nothing to lose." Something flickered in his eyes. Curiosity, perhaps. "Everyone has something to lose, Ms. Foster." "My sister is dying," Amelia said simply. "I've already lost my parents. I'm about to lose my house. So no, Mr. Reed, I really don't." Jackson studied her for a long moment. "Your honesty is refreshing, if inappropriate for a standard interview." "I'm sorry if I've wasted your time," Amelia said, rising to leave, disappointment crushing her chest. "I didn't dismiss you." His tone stopped her instantly. "Sit down." He tapped something on his tablet, then looked up at her with calculating eyes. "I have a proposition for you, Miss Foster. One that would solve your financial problems completely." Hope surged through her. "I'm listening." "I require someone to fulfill a specific role. Not a typical assistant position. Something more personal." Amelia's guard rose immediately. "I'm not interested in anything inappropriate, Mr. Reed." To her surprise, he almost smiled. "Your mind jumps to sordid conclusions. I'm offering you a business arrangement." He stood and walked to a cabinet, retrieving a thick folder. "My company is negotiating a merger with Westfield Medical. Their CEO, Thomas Westfield, is old-fashioned, values-oriented. He believes successful businesses are built by people with stable personal lives." Understanding dawned. "And you need to appear more stable?" "Precisely." Jackson placed the folder before her. "This contract outlines a 6-month arrangement. You would present yourself as my partner in both business and personal settings, attend functions, create appropriate appearances. In return, you would receive compensation sufficient to cover your sister's medical expenses and your family's debt, with a substantial bonus upon successful completion." Amelia's heart raced. This couldn't be real. "You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend?" "The term is companion," he corrected. "Everything would be strictly professional between us. Just a convincing appearance for external observers." "Why me?" Amelia asked, suspicion cutting through her desperation. "You could hire a model or actress." "Because you're genuine," Jackson replied matter-of-factly. "You don't belong in my world, which makes you fascinating to it. Your desperation ensures your dedication, and your circumstances guarantee your discretion." The calculated assessment should have offended her. Instead, it terrified her how accurately he'd read her situation. "All your sister's medical expenses covered," he continued. "Past, present, and future. Plus a generous monthly stipend and that bonus I mentioned. Financial security, Ms. Foster. Isn't that what you came here for?" Amelia stared at the contract. It was thick with legal language, dozens of pages held together by a silver clip. She flipped through it quickly, seeing references to confidentiality agreements, scheduling requirements, and compensation terms. The figure on the payment page made her breath catch. It was more money than she had ever imagined having. "I need to think about this," she said weakly. "Your sister's treatment options are diminishing daily," Jackson reminded her, his voice neutral but the implication clear. "The contract is non-negotiable. You have 10 minutes to decide while I take a call." He walked to the far side of the office, leaving Amelia alone with the contract and her conscience. She should read every word. She knew that. But as she flipped through the pages, all she could think about was Lily's face growing paler each day. The experimental treatment that could save her. The mountain of debt crushing them both. When Jackson returned, Amelia had already made her decision. "Where do I sign?" He provided an elegant fountain pen. Initial each page, sign the last. As she scrawled her signature on the final page, a weight lifted from her shoulders. Whatever this arrangement entailed, it would save Lily. That was all that mattered. Congratulations, Ms. Foster, Jackson said, taking the contract and pressing a button on his desk. You've just solved your problems. Diane entered almost. The unread fine print. The transformation began immediately. Diane escorted Amelia to the building's private spa level, where a team waited to remake her into someone worthy of being seen with Jackson Reed. These are your new clothes, Diane explained, gesturing to racks of designer outfits. Hair, makeup, and etiquette coaches will work with you today before tonight's dinner. As stylists fussed over her, Amelia finally asked the question burning in her mind. Can I see my sister? Tomorrow, Diane promised. She's being settled into the private wing. That evening, barely recognizable in an emerald gown that cost more than her car, Amelia was delivered to an exclusive restaurant where Jackson waited. His eyes assessed her transformation with clinical detachment. Better was his only comment. During dinner with his business associates, Amelia played her part well, smiling and nodding at appropriate moments. But when they were alone in his car afterward, she finally found her voice. I need to understand exactly what I've agreed to, she insisted. You should have thought of that before signing, Jackson replied coldly. Then, seeing her distress, he sighed. Page 42, paragraph 6. That night in her new luxury apartment, another provision in the contract, Amelia finally read the document thoroughly. Her heart stopped at the paragraph Jackson had referenced. The contracted party agrees to present themselves as the romantic partner of J. Reed in all public and professional settings for the duration specified. This includes but is not limited to cohabitation as necessary, physical displays of affection within reasonable boundaries, and unquestioning support of all business decisions. Further pages revealed more alarming clauses. She couldn't speak to the press without approval, playing pretend 3 weeks into their arrangement. Amelia had settled into a strange new reality. By day, she shadowed Jackson at his company, learning his business to better play her role. By night, they attended dinners and events, her arm linked through his, both playing their parts flawlessly. The Westfield merger was progressing well. Thomas Westfield had taken an immediate liking to Amelia, impressed by her grounding influence on Jackson. Young lady, you've worked miracles with this one, Westfield told her at a charity gala, nodding toward Jackson. Never thought I'd see him smile. Amelia glanced at Jackson, surprised to realize he was indeed smiling at her. Something warm and unexpected flickered between them before he looked away. Later that week, Amelia visited Lily, now thriving under the experimental treatment in her private hospital suite. He's not what I expected, Amelia admitted when Lily asked about Jackson. Sometimes when no one's watching, he's almost human. Be careful, Lily warned. This isn't real, remember? But parts were beginning to feel real. Jackson had started asking her opinion on business matters. Sometimes their hands would touch accidentally, lingering longer than necessary. Once, caught in the rain leaving a restaurant, he'd sheltered her with his jacket, his arm protective around her shoulders. At a company retreat, their careful distance collapsed when they were photographed for the company newsletter. Closer, the photographer instructed. Jackson's arm slid around her waist, drawing her against him. His usual coldness gave way to something softer as he looked down at her. Perfect, the photographer exclaimed, capturing the moment. But the real shift came after a particularly tense business dinner. Back at his penthouse, Jackson poured them both drinks. You were impressive tonight, he said, watching her over his glass. That was quick thinking with Westfield's questions. Just doing what the contract requires, Amelia replied, though the compliment pleased her. Is that all this is to you? A contract? His question hung between them, loaded with unspoken meaning. Before she could answer, his phone rang. The call left him visibly disturbed. What's wrong? She asked. Nothing that concerns you. His wall slammed back into place. But that night, woken by sounds from his study, Amelia found Jackson staring at old photographs, a woman and young boy she didn't recognize. When he noticed her, she expected anger. Instead, he began to talk, sharing pieces of a past he'd kept hidden from everyone. The woman was his mother, who had died when he was 12. The scar on his face came from the same accident. His cold exterior, his obsession with control, all armor against a world that had taken everything from him. Something fundamental changed between them that night. Their pretense began blurring with reality. leaving them both confused about where the contract ended and genuine feelings began. The unexpected clause. 5 months into their arrangement, the Westfield merger was nearly complete. Amelia had become indispensable to Jackson, both publicly and privately. Their relationship, though still technically contractual, had evolved into something neither had anticipated. One evening while Jackson was traveling, Amelia decided to organize his home office as a surprise. Among his papers, she discovered a folder labeled with her name. Curiosity overcame her better judgment and she opened it. Inside was a modified version of their contract, with an addendum she'd never seen. The clause stated that upon successful completion of the merger, Amelia would be required to continue their arrangement for a minimum of 5 additional years, with strict limitations on her personal freedom. Most disturbing was a non-compete clause that would prevent her from working in any related industry if she ever left. Attached was a note in Jackson's handwriting. Implement after Westfield's signing. Betrayal crashed over her. All the moments she'd thought were genuine, all the growing trust had been manipulation to ensure her continued compliance. He'd never intended to let her go when the 6 months ended. When Jackson returned the next day, he found Amelia waiting in his office, the contract on his desk. "Were you ever going to tell me about this?" she demanded, voice shaking. Jackson's expression hardened. "You weren't supposed to see that yet." "Yet? So you were planning to spring another 5 years on me? Make me even more dependent on you?" "It's a business decision," he said coldly. "You've proven valuable. I'm not one of your acquisitions, Jackson." Tears streamed down her face. I actually thought you'd changed. That we had something real." For a moment, vulnerability flashed across his face before the mask returned. "Everything has been according to contract." "Then I quit," Amelia said firmly. "I'll pay the penalty somehow." "You can't afford it," he reminded her. "I don't care," she replied, moving toward the door. "Some prices are too high, even for saving Lily." As she reached for the handle, his voice stopped her. "Amelia, wait." She turned, seeing real emotion crack through his facade. "I can't be owned, Jackson. Not even by you. Rewriting terms." 3 days passed with no word from Jackson. Amelia stayed in her apartment, waiting for legal documents demanding the penalty payment. Instead, Diane arrived with a single envelope. "He asked me to deliver this personally," she said, her usual efficiency tinged with something like respect. Inside was a single-page document titled Release of Contract, with Jackson's signature at the bottom. All obligations, financial penalties, and restrictions were null and void. A separate note indicated that Lily's medical care would continue, regardless of Amelia's decision. Stunned, Amelia sat staring at the papers when her doorbell rang again. Jackson stood in the hallway looking distinctly un-Jackson-like, his usual impeccable appearance replaced by casual clothes and uncharacteristic uncertainty. "May I come in?" he asked, none of his usual commanding presence evident. Inside, he remained standing as if unsure of his welcome. "I've spent my life treating people like assets," he began, calculating their value, their usefulness. "It was safer that way." "What changed?" Amelia asked quietly. "You." He met her eyes directly. "You signed a contract without reading it because you loved your sister enough to sacrifice everything. I've never loved anyone that much." He placed another document on the table. "This is a new contract. One I hope you'll actually read this time." This contract was only 1 page long. It proposed a real partnership, professional and personal, based on mutual respect and genuine choice. "No penalties, no ownership, no control. I don't know how to do this," Jackson admitted. "I've never had a real relationship, but I'd like to try if you would." Amelia studied the man before her, still scarred, still complicated, but now honest in his vulnerability. "I think," she said, taking the pen he offered, "this contract needs a revision first." She crossed out the word contract and wrote promise instead, then signed her name. "Much better terms," she said, offering the pen back to him, as Jackson added his signature beside hers. They both recognized that the most valuable agreements weren't written on paper at all, but in the trust carefully built between two people brave enough to tear up the old rules and write new ones together.